Okay, we'd like to introduce ourselves first and have you introduce yourself, show us your teacher, and then we'll get started, and you know what question is going to be. Not only what unit it is, but what question.
My name's Andy Levy. I'm a trial lawyer from Baltimore, and I also teach at the University of Maryland School of Law.
My name is Madeline Dunn, and I am an historian for Delaware's Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs and a former resident of Denver.
I'm John Kaminsky, Director of the Center for the Study of the American Constitution at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Please introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Preston, and I'm a junior.
My name is Elizabeth Nicholson, and I'm a junior.
My name is Luke Haas, and I'm a senior.
I'm Rachel Mangione, and I'm a junior, and this is our teacher, Mr. Mark Tallhofer.
Okay.
Question number 2. Although posterity has tended to emphasize the work of the Constitution's framers in the Federal Convention of 1787, the ratification of the U.S. Constitution in 1787-1788 was a landmark in the history of government. What evidence can you offer to support or dispute this claim? In what ways, if any, was the plan for ratification an example of social contract theory? And finally, what precedents were established by the ratification process, and why have they continued to be important?
Madison wrote that, as the instrument came from the convention, it was nothing more than a draft of a plan, nothing but a dead letter until life and validity were breathed into it through the voice of the people, speaking through the several state conventions. As Professor Bernstein asserts, the process constructed by the framers to grant this legitimacy is a landmark because it focused solely on consent of the governed, largely free from the influence of previously established governments. To evaluate the influence of the ratification process, we must look to its historical context. The Federal Farmer in letter number 8 refers to the undemocratic aspects of the Roman Republic when he wrote, "In Rome, half the inhabitants were slaves, and the other half never knew what equal liberty was." During the mid to late 18th century, political superpowers incorporated almost no participation from average citizens. For example, in 18th century Britain, it is estimated that 3% of the British population was eligible to vote in parliamentary elections.
During ratification, many states eliminated property requirements in order to engage more citizens in state conventions, resulting in 25% of the population being eligible to vote. Though still a minority of the American population, this expansion of voting eligibility during ratification is paralleled in Britain with the 1832 passage of the Representation of the People Act, which enlarged the electorate by 60%, allowing 1 in 7 Englishmen to vote. The ratification of the Constitution began with the Confederation Congress, who then sent it to the states requesting special ratifying conventions in accordance with Article 7. The Constitution was effective on June 21st of 1788 with the ratification of the 9th state, New Hampshire. The debates at the ratifying conventions would be in full view of the public, and the citizens, rather than the state legislatures, would vote for the delegates to the conventions. By avoiding the pre-existing state government's involvement in the ratification process, ratification allowed for the citizens to enter the social contract themselves, as opposed to the state legislators consenting for them. As John Locke argues in his second treatise on government, in the state of nature, people will seek personal advancement, resulting eventually in the infringement of others' inalienable rights.
Every human is entitled to these rights, which Locke defines as the right to life, liberty, and property. They will then enter into a social contract, yielding certain rights, privileges, and powers to receive protection for their most important rights from the government. Americans entered into a social contract when they elected delegates that would vote on the ratification of the Constitution. The most important precedents set by the ratification process were the focus on constituent power and engagement, which were first established at the Massachusetts State Constitutional Conventions in 1780. Power has remained in the hands of the American citizen through constitutional amendments and the initiative and referendum process at the state level.
The Bill of Rights that was adopted to the Constitution soon after ratification stemmed from many citizens' fears of a government that would jeopardize their inalienable rights. The direct election of senators by the 17th Amendment changed Article 1, Section 3, Clause 2, and transferred the appointment from the states to the people. As the only method of direct democracy in the United States, the initiative and referendum process places legislating power directly in the hands of the people. The initiative and referendum process has been established into 24 states and has increased voter turnout in Colorado by 12.5%. Currently, there are 47 proposed initiatives on the 2010 Colorado ballot, allowing the citizens of Colorado to vote directly on issues that are important to them. We are now open for questions.
Can you give us any political reasons why it would be preferable to go to ratifying conventions as opposed to state legislatures. You talked theoretically in your opening statement, but any political reasons?
Many states would, the Constitution that was created at the Constitutional Convention changed the union from that of a league of friendships, as was outlined in the Articles of Confederation of Sovereign States, which is Article 2, to that of a federal government that focused on dual federalism. And it took a lot of the powers away from the states and placed it in the hands of the federal government.
The state legislatures would not accept so much the idea of giving up a lot of their power, their sovereignty, as established under the federal constitution. It was sent to ratifying conventions, so it was more likely to get passed.
Why?
Because the states would not give up their sovereignty. And by having the people ratify it instead of the states, it was more likely to get passed.
How big an issue was slavery? We know it was a to say the least, a bone of contention during the drafting of the Constitution. But what role, if any, did it play during the ratification process?
Slaves were not able to vote, not engaging them in this social contract. This, I believe, left them out of authority of the government until the ratification of the 14th Amendment.
However, slavery wasn't one of the biggest issues in the ratification debates. We can see that the addition of a Bill of Rights they focused much more on that, and that was one of the main anti-federalism positions during ratification.